this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
And I'm tired of pretending it's not. Comedy is subjective, Murray. Isn't that what they say? All of you, this system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong the same way that you decide what's funny or not.
Well, okay, I think I might understand that you did this to start a movement, to become a symbol.
Come on, Murray. Do I look like the kind of clown that could start a movement? I killed those guys because they were awful. Everybody is awful these days. It's enough to make anyone crazy.
Okay, so that's it. You're crazy. That's your defense for killing 3 young men?
They couldn't carry a tube to save their lives. Oh, why is everybody so upset about these guys? If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I'd pass you every day and you don't notice me. But these guys, what, because Thomas Wayne cried about them on TV?
You have a problem with Thomas Wayne?
Yes, I do. Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys. That we won't werewolf and go wild.
You finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity out there. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men. Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everybody.
You just wanted to make fun of me. Just like the rest of them.
You don't know the first thing about it. Look what happened because of what you did, what it led to. There were riots out there. 2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get
I don't think so.
when you cross
I
a
think we're
mentally
done
ill
with
loner
this.
with a
That's it.
society? Good night.
Not dead tonight on the live telecast of the program. One of his guests.
By Franklin as Joker is currently under arrest. Nearly just a punchline to his
I think we're trying to get this man was planning for everything.
Never ends. This is 1080 GCR. You get all the news you need all day long. Good morning. It's 42 degrees at 10:30 on this Thursday, October 15th. I'm Stan L. Brunson, and here's what happened. It's day 18 of the garbage collection. 10,000 tons of garbage piling up every day. Even the nicest sections of the city are looking like slums. Health Commissioner Edward O'Boy is declaring a citywide state of emergency for the first time in decades. No need to wait until somebody dies and comes down with typhoid fever. It's already a serious situation. It's something that affects almost everyone in the city, no matter who they are or where they live.
You can't go down no one avenue without seeing nothing but garbage and rats.
It's starting to affect my business. Some customers can't get in here because of the garbage situation.
I'm not out there about to smell it, but I think to look at it, it's terrible.
It don't affect me except for the very bad smell is horrific.
A mess. I've been in this country for 50 years and I've never seen anything like it. What is this welcome?
Put them in a room and sit there and talk till they get it over with. 24 hours, 48 hours, and we always
Get him. Get him. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, skeletons. Get him. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, skeletons. Get him. Uh-oh. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, skeletons. Get him. Uh-oh.
It was a tale of two Saturdays. As the number of COVID cases in the U.S. closed in on 1.5 million, the death toll topped 88,000, and most states took tentative steps to reopen. Predecessor leaked 160 tweets since last Sunday that Trump boils down to a single word: Obamagate. Earlier this week, Obama tweeted out a one-word response of his own: vote. But on Saturday, the former president made a rare public appearance in two virtual
So many of the folks in charge know what they're doing. A lot of them aren't even pretending to be in charge.
And we begin with a response this morning from one of the president's top advisors, President Trump's top advisors during this crisis, Peter Navarro. Mr. Navarro, thank you for joining us this morning. You know, President Obama continued this in his second commencement address last night, suggesting that things are screwed up because people in charge are taking the easy way out. Your response?
Well, I'm glad Mr. Obama has a new job as Joe Biden's press secretary. I note for the record that in his speech that I read, there was no mention of off to China. His new normal was a flat line. The Chinese did take that down in about 30 days, but we are in the process right now of rebuilding that. And this president, Donald J. Trump, is one of the skills to do so. Because you know what, George, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the future. Buy American, deregulate, and innovate. What do I mean by that? Bring the jobs home, make it here.
You say the Chinese took down the American economy, so you're saying they deliberately unleashed the COVID virus on the United States? Do you have any evidence for that?
I did not say they deliberately did it, but their China virus, let's go over the facts here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The virus was spawned in Wuhan province. Patient zero was in November. The Chinese, behind the shield of the World Health Organization, for 2 months hid the virus from the world and then sent hundreds of thousands of Chinese on aircraft to Milan, New York, and around the world to seed that. They could have kept it in Wuhan. Instead, it became a pandemic. So that's why I say the Chinese did that to Americans, and they are responsible now for our intellectual property. Big part of that deal. Guess what? The FBI has now issued warnings to deter and hold the world hostage. So yes, I do blame the Chinese. And it'd be really interesting, George, as to how this election unfolds, because you've got Joe Biden, who's been a long friend of China, versus President Trump, who's the only president who's ever stood up to China.
Let's pick up on that, because on Thursday, Vice President Biden spoke out on this and took on President Trump directly. Let's listen.
The truth is, Trump was praising the Chinese government, downplaying the threat to the American people. As I said, as I was warning the need to get the people into China to see what was actually going on. And the Chinese government's word, we squandered critical time. And so I just don't. And now he's trying to play this China card.
The vice president had an op-ed in USA Today in January. He warned in February. All through the month of February, President Trump was praising President Xi of China. He was saying he trusts President Xi of China. He was saying President Xi of China was being transparent. That's why Vice President Biden says that the president was downplaying the threat from China.
Yeah, well, Joe Biden's got 40 years of sucking up to the Chinese, including 8 years as vice president. We all know about the $1 billion that his son took from the Chinese.
That's just not factual, sir. That is not a fact. He did not take $1 billion from the Chinese.
Went into that hedge fund. But be that as it may, I do think this election is going to be a referendum. have an unfavorable opinion. In my judgment, the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party over the last 3 months, particularly in terms of unleashing this pandemic, I think they're shooting for 100% negative views. So we'll have Joe Biden, long friend of China, President Donald J. Trump, the only president in modern history to stand up to China, going into November, and it's what this is going to be about. It's not going to be about the pandemic. It's going to be about jobs, because
but
what we have
you
to
keep
do now
talking
is
about
build the economy.
We're going to talk about the economy. You keep talking about China, though, but all during the month of February, as I said, the president was continuing to praise China, was continuing to praise President Xi Jinping, was trying to work with him.
So first of all, I think it's great that we have a president who can get along with all world leaders. So that's number one. But number two, there's no lost weeks. This starting gun for the China pandemic started on January 30th when President Trump had the courage to pull down the flights from China. That was an enormously courageous decision. It took a lot of discipline. And from that day, and I was personally involved in a lot of this, we were moving on 3 vectors of attack in February: vaccine development, because what we saw on Friday in the Rose Garden was the announcement of a 14-company race to a vaccine with a goal of December. What we've seen is therapeutics like remdesivir already going into hospitals right now to save American lives. And we had a company like Honeywell building 2 factories in 5 weeks, George, instead of 9 months. 5 weeks, that's Trump time, to produce 20 million N95 masks a month. So don't tell me that we lost February, because I was there. I'm right here, and this president was directing us to move as quickly as possible, even as publicly we were trying to figure out the fog of war, just how serious this pandemic.
You know, you mentioned
our policy advisors to the president. So everything I was doing with the help of Rick Bright and others during February was the White House, was the Trump White House. It was all transparent with the task force. Here's what happened with Rick Bright. It's an American tragedy, George. This guy is quite talented, but he was asked to be the first commander over at NIH to start the testing bill with $1 billion behind him. Instead of accepting that mission, this man has talent. He's a smart man. We could have used him on the battlefield. He's not there now, and it was because of decisions that he made. And it is his name, George. It is
his expertise, his vaccines. He wants to work in vaccine development. They're putting in diagnostics. He's working on vaccines.
See, here's the thing, George. I was under the president, right? I came here to do great. What am I now? A conscript in the war on the China virus? I'm like a quartermaster and a shipping clerk half the time. Do I complain? No. That's my mission for this president, for this country. We do what we have to do when we have to do it for this country. And Rick Bright, he made a choice. He could have been making a tremendous contribution over at NIH to testing, and you and others have been complaining about testing. He could have been the field general, and now he's off the battlefield, and it was by his own choice, sir.
Let's talk about the economic response. We saw some tough numbers at the end of the week on jobs, on manufacturing, on retail sales. The House passed that $3 trillion, the next stimulus package, on Friday. Is that a basis for negotiation? Is the president prepared to sign another relief package?
So Nancy Pelosi basically lost me with that package when she has $1,200 checks for illegal immigrants, and it just goes downhill from there. What we have to do, George, is basically go with the fiscal and monetary stimulus that we've been going through. We've got a lot coursing through the system now. We may need more, and I'm going to let others above my pay grade negotiate that. But what I'm focused on,
Powell says we do need more.
Well, what I'm focused on, George, and this is the real key to success, is going to be the structural adjustments we're going to have to make. For every service sector job we might lose as we adjust to this China virus, we're going to have to replace that with manufacturing jobs, which do have a high multiplier in terms of creating service sector supplies and equipment supply chains home. So we build it here. That'll be both good economics, going to be key to the future, with innovation. Innovation really is going to be the key. The General Motors plant for ventilators, went up, used their manufacturing might to replicate that in tool and die makers throughout that supply chain. That was a miracle, George. And we can replicate that throughout this economy, repurposing our factories. This is the jobs president, the innovation president, the manufacturing president, and this is how we're going to get through to the other end of this crisis here.
Finally, sir, I want to get to that firing of the State Department Inspector General on Friday night, Steve Linick. Fourth Inspector General removed by the president in the last several weeks. What do you say to Democratic critics who say what the president is doing is undermining any idea of independent oversight?
See, this is my lane here, George. That's way out of my lane. The president clearly has the legal authority to do that. What I can tell you, George, based on my experience here, I don't know if it was the same when you were here, there's a bureaucracy out there. There's lots of people when they leave this bureaucracy. There's always going to be somebody better to replace them, somebody more loyal, not to the president necessarily, but to the Trump agenda. That's what's important. The Trump agenda, this president has transformed the Republican Party into the party of the working class, and I'm here because the president loves creating good jobs for Americans who work with their hands. And anybody in this...
Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
We are here in Omaha, Nebraska this morning with Warren Buffett, the chairman and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. He's just released his 55th annual shareholder letter to the shareholders over this weekend. And this is actually the 13th year that we are now in Omaha talking to him after that letter. This is a show that we call Ask Warren, so that people can here with us right now. And Warren, thank you for being here today. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about the letter. Obviously, one of the things that you touch on in the letter is when people should be buying stocks. We're going to dig into a lot of it, but when you're looking at the futures down about 818 points this morning, I think probably the first thing viewers want to hear from you are your thoughts on what's happening with the coronavirus, if this is a reason to panic, and if you are worried about this.
Well, I don't know I have any special thoughts beyond the news on the coronavirus. The very first day I bought stocks was March 12th, 1941, 42. And the stocks were down about 2%. And that's what stocks are to businesses. In fact, people would be better off if they say, I bought a business today, not a stock today, because that gives them a different perspective on it. And presumably, if you buy a farm, if you buy an apartment house, if you buy a business, you're going to own it for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And the real question is, has the 10-year or 20-year outlook for American businesses changed in the last 24 hours or 48 hours? And you'll notice many of the businesses we own, partially own, American Express, we've owned for 20 years, Coca-Cola, we've owned it for 40 years. Those are businesses, and basically.
Although there are a lot of people who look at the market and they say, look, I want to buy, but I don't want to buy when the market's sitting at new highs, when it's been hitting new records every day. Maybe it's off 800 points this morning, but maybe there's more of a decline to come because the effect of the coronavirus is going to be an impact on the global economy. IMF said that over the weekend. You are going to see weakness as not only China, but other countries try and address this. You're right, it may not change things over the 5 or 10 year span of things, but if I think that I can buy something for potentially 10% cheaper, maybe more than that if I wait a week or a month, maybe that's what I'm sitting around.
Well, if you think that, then you're going to get fabulously rich if you're right. All you have to do is just keep buying at 10-day intervals, keep taking your 10-day prediction. If I knew what the market was going to do, obviously, but you don't. I don't think anybody knows what the market's going to do. I think you know whether you're making an intelligent purchase at a given price. Everybody, when they buy a stock, if you're going to buy, say, General Motors that has 1,400,000,000 shares out, you should be able to take a yellow pad like you have there, and on one page, say, let's say it's selling for 30. It isn't selling that low, but that'd be $42 billion. You should say, I am buying the General Motors company for $42 billion because, and you should get it on a piece of paper. And then if you want to have a separate piece of paper, it says, I think I know what the stock market's going to do, so I know whether it'll be higher or lower. But you don't. You don't have that.
No, but if I worry that the economy is going to slow down, not just for the quarter, but for the year, that would impact how many cars I think they might be able to sell or even produce.
I'll guarantee you cars are going to slow slow down someday. They in 1932, General Motors had 19,000 dealers. That's more than all the auto dealers in the United States today. There are only 125 million people, but they had 19,000 dealers. They produced or sold, it was 1 month, I think, when they sold less than a tenth of a car, right at a tenth of a car per dealer. That was a terrific time to buy General Motors. and forget about the market. If you can predict the market, you don't need to read balance sheets. You don't need to read anything. You certainly can't predict the market by reading the daily newspaper. That is for sure. And you certainly can't predict the market by listening to me. But you're buying businesses. And if you plan to buy a local service station yesterday and it was closing day, I don't think you'd tear your hair out or anything like that. You'd have already looked at where it was located, the contract it had with the suppliers, and decision on competition. People, because they can make decisions every second in stocks, whereas they can't with farms. They think an investment in stocks is different than an investment in a business or an investment in a farm or investment in an apartment house. But it isn't. If you get your money's worth in terms of future earning power over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, you're going to have made a good. Although in the 1920s it became more and more gospel as the boom went on. But Edgar Royale Smith set out to write a book on bonds versus stocks. And he said that he went in with the idea that bonds would be a better that has been true for a long, long time, but nobody paid any attention to it. I'm going to go with them, but we receive all the way happy to receive it. We get this done. For the fact that the retained earnings are used to build new earning power, repurchase shares, which increases your ownership in the company. And but retained earnings are some people. That's the only reason that this is about
that red change to actually say that this was an important book. People paid attention to it. But you're right, it added to the frenzy that built up from 1920.
That is true, because you can get a full book from there. You get more trouble with a good idea than a bad idea. Because the good idea works. I mean, it's a good idea to buy people go crazy. But the good idea works, and it works, and it works. Work out better than bonds most of the time. And after a while, people forget that there was another limiting condition. Like the Royal Smith, that's what was the kind of stock. It's the kind of stuff. The stock is a house, and bigger equity than earnings. The stock that will help in the company is all the stuff that we have to make a couple of times the stock is going to talk about. The usual correct reflection on this, like, it's very changing conditions, but people just look and pick up the confirmation to stock prices. And that's what happens in bear markets. People start out thinking stocks are cheap, and then they start thinking stocks are bad. The stock can be a good buyer of that. The bond can be a good buyer of that. It depends on both.
And don't forget we talked about stocks because bond yields are so low, because interest rates are so low.
Yeah. If you look at the present situation, we talked about this before, that you get more for your money in stocks than bonds. That doesn't have to be the case. I mean, but it's usually been the case in America. Very usually been the case. And if you buy a